Yeah, crazy stuff. Let's give it another couple of minutes so that more people can join in, and then we'll jump into it. It's going to be pretty informal. We're just going to have a chat about some of the things that we liked. I don't know if you like it and you've got access to some of the preview material. We may be able to do a quick demo or demonstrate some of those new capabilities. But it's been a crazy week, a crazy week. We've got some work that we're doing at DXC, and some of my colleagues were like, "Oh yeah, we had to stay up till 2 a.m. just working on that document." Whereas I was like, "Oh man, I woke up at 3 a.m. to go and watch build. I wanted to be the first one, to be there and to listen to what Satya has to say, and to get excited about it and to go and share it with the team, because I feel like if I don't do it while it's live, I'm very unlikely to go and watch it, later when, things have passed. I just get too lazy. So I'm like, wake up in the morning. You don't have anything better to do than to sleep. Doesn't matter. You sleep when you're dead. Go watch it, get to know what it's all about, and then go and share it with the rest of the world. And it was totally worth it. One thing that you don't get when you watch it on demand is the chat. And to be able to sort of provide some interactions. But also one thing that I really liked is you can interact to other people's messages. So someone was like, got really upset. I think it was in the, I can't remember, but it was a session that I was really excited about. And I worked with the product manager. So, I had a lot of respect for them. I think it was Nora's session, if I'm not mistaken. But then, someone made a comment like, it's called build, not sales pitch. So I'm like, I got really offended when I saw that. So I played moderator and I booed them. Boo. How can you say that about that PM? And then the moment I did that, 4 or 5 other people went boo as well. It's like, yes, this is working. So it's, this interaction with, the audience in general, just saying that this is really exciting, or, that you really enjoy that product that is coming out is really great. And you can't really give them that feedback during the on-demand sessions. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. So let's jump into it. I think, we're just 5 minutes past the hour. And it's very informal. So I don't have anything prepared. I just have a few links that I just asked Elaiza like 2 minutes ago just to share with me, so that we can just maybe share some things and have a look at them. I am excited about a couple of things that I saw. So I can start just by covering some of that. But maybe, Elaiza, so you pasted this book of news link. I think this is like our go-to Bible. If you want to know at a high level, sort of what are the things that were introduced during this conference, it's just to have a look at it. It gives you it's very well formatted as well. It gives you a table of content of all the information in there. I'm just loading it, and I'll share my screen. Things might be slow on my side, so 2 reasons: rural Wi-Fi, and my kids are watching Netflix, so that might be the reason why things are a bit slow.
Get Starlink.
Yeah. I should do that. Is this white screen? Let's see. Can you guys see my screen or not yet?
Not yet.
Not yet. Still loading. There we go.
Yep.
Now we can see it.
Cool, awesome. So yeah, this is the link in here. So AKA book build-book-of-news. And it has quite a lot of content about everything that was announced during this conference, and what a great conference. And then you can go in here, you can have a look at a high glance the things that we're interested in. Obviously, this is the Dynamics 365 and the Power Platform user group, so we'll focus on some of those capabilities in here. And there was a lot of talk about low code, fusion development, and how those two are getting really, really strong. And I love that theme carried on over and over throughout the conference. And Satya talked about it, and every PM that was talking about their part was covering it as well. Starting with Satya's session, one thing that I really enjoyed about it is that how they're bridging that gap between doing the work on the cloud and then doing the work locally. So it's almost like reverting back to old school, old days where, you do have machines that can run some of that workload locally. So they talked about those new devices. What was it called? It sounded like an anime Japanese.
Voltari.
Yeah, that's the one. So those new devices that consume no energy whatsoever to do some expensive workloads that usually take a lot of power when you have a GPU running, or that you would rely on the cloud to do those services. So bringing those on premise. But also one thing that Satya talked about that got me really excited is having the possibility to provision within seconds a dev environment on the cloud and use that as your virtual desktop. And I love that idea because I always thought, why do we carry on all those heavy laptops? Like, oh, I need that much RAM, I need, that much power. When in fact that can be offloaded somewhere else. And if you've got like a little phone with you, then you can just use that to do your work. So that would still work. So this is what really struck a chord with me in Satya's session. What did you guys think? What else do you think was interesting in Satya's comments?
I'll go if no one has anything.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so for me, I can't remember which number out of the 10, because if you watch the keynote, he went through the different 10 things that they were going to highlight in Microsoft Build. And in one of them, he talked about the Microsoft Intelligent Data Platform. And to me, I'd never heard of that before. And the use case that he talked about was Cyber Monday over the United States. So Cyber Monday is I guess, I suppose, like a Black Friday where you have a lot of sales going on and you have an e-commerce site. So the e-commerce site would be built on top of the Microsoft Intelligent Data Platform to get some of those building blocks in place. So your data would live in either something like Azure Cosmos DB, or the other example that he spoke about was SQL Hyperscale. And then you would be using something like Azure Synapse Link to cross-examine all of those transactions in real time. And then you would use machine learning to correlate what the user is looking at with other, products in your database or data sources, and then be able to relay those back to the end user that's on the e-commerce site so that you can try and get more, buy-in from them from whatever they're browsing. And to me, that was quite cool because, like AK, like I have Power Portals, or now Power Pages background, and like I've worked with other portal platforms as well. But to hear that and see that you can do more underneath the hood with the Microsoft Intelligent Data Platform, I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. That kind of opened my eyes because I didn't think that those type of advanced capabilities exist when you apply on top of Microsoft Azure, which they're now calling the Microsoft Intelligent Data Platform. Because in Azure Cosmos DB, like it already has like a shopping cart. From the video, the demo that they showed, it has like shopping cart features that you can just, I guess, plug and play. So yeah, I thought that was cool because I was like, oh, okay, there's another alternative out there if you don't want to go with a no-code, low-code product. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. That was really exciting part of his session. Anybody else wants to cover anything about the keynote? Yeah, go ahead, Hamish.
I think and probably it's probably overlapping with what your comments, Rami, about the developer flow. I think there seems to be like a lot of focus on how people work, and different people have different working styles, right? So there's I think one of the things that I liked out of this bill was the kind of that focus on the flow, but also like fusion teams and working with other people. So I guess if you've got people working on a power app solution or whatever, you can have people working in their low code environment doing the UI or whatever, and then your devs are creating all the technical stuff in terms of custom connectors and stuff, and they can do that fully within their Visual Studio environment, not even to open a browser if they don't want to, and still deploy like these assets for the citizen developer to pick up and keep working with. So those people can work in completely different styles, but on the same team. And I think it's, so the thing about developer flow is you work where you're comfortable and are most productive, rather than having to switch between Visual Studio and the make.powerapps.com site all the time. So that's pretty cool.
That was really amazing and straight on the point, Hamish. I want to talk about that subject maybe a little bit later when we talk about Julie's house session, because she has a developer background and you can see it. She's like, pro dev. She loves it. It's, she has the scars and all of that. And she talked exactly about that. And when I go to those conferences, I always have this one fear. Am I behind? Is there something that I'm doing wrong? And people look at me and laugh at me and chuck paper at me. But then she showed us something. I'm like, that's exactly what we're doing at work right now. So we're on it. We're on par. So we'll talk a little bit about that later. So stay tuned. One thing that I've noticed about Satya's keynote is that he really stole everybody's thunder. Right, so he announced those things that everybody was waiting for, at least from an MVP. I'm like, they're going to talk about that, and then he announced it. So when Charles Lamana came in, and he's like, "Oh, I've got an announcement about that fifth member." He's like, "Ooh, what is that fifth member of the Power Platform?" Everybody was waiting for it, and he's like, "Power Pages." I'm like, "Yeah, that's old news." Satya already talked about it. This is nothing exciting about that. And obviously, being MVPs, we had a little bit of a sneak peek a couple of months ago during the MVP Summit around what it is and what's going to change. And it's definitely one of those sessions where a lot of people were confused. They're like, so, what does that mean? Do we not need Power Apps portal anymore? Or is that going to resolve some of the issues that we had with Power Apps portal where we don't need to do this and that? Or is it going to have a different licensing scheme and so on? So there's definitely a lot of the moderators coming in during that time. And Eva, I noticed some of the MVPs were sort of putting in some information, just saying that, hang on, the core engine is still the same. What is going to change is basically the authoring experience. And because they've sort of revamped and rebuilt this, it basically catered, or it warranted a change in the marketing name and rebranding and so on. So Elaiza and AK, I know you guys are Power Pages experts right now. I don't know. Can you say I've got 5 years of Power Pages experience in your CV now? Or is that gonna be like wrong?
I don't know. I don't really say that.
We need to update the documents, at least.
Talking about updating documents, I was just getting the links. I think Charles Lamana's one, or no, sorry, bear with me. It was where is it? I didn't save it. Is it Sangya's title? Yeah. So she's the product manager for Power Apps Pages or Power Pages. And if you look at her title, it still says Power Apps Portals. And I'm like, yeah, they didn't want to change it before the conference because that would be a spoiler alert. So that's why they kept it as is. But now they probably have to go back to the documentation and change it. So you're 100% correct, AK.
Yeah, like for me, the cool thing about Power Pages and AK, I don't know if you feel the same way as me, and it's I think back to the days when I learned ADX Studio Portals, which is where Power Pages originated from, and beforehand, I had like a lot of experience with configuring and building in Dynamics 365, again known as Dynamics CRM back in the day. And, when I was put into my first Portals project, this is when I was living in Melbourne in Australia. And I just remember thinking, how is this Dynamics? Like, I know it's not Dynamics. I know it's Portals, but you still have to configure in Dynamics. And that learning curve was there. It was quite steep, but because I already had that experience in configuration, about, I don't know, few weeks I got up to speed and I got comfortable with it. But then if you then introduce Portals to someone else who has no background whatsoever on building in Dynamics 365, because you're building within that interface of creating a table, creating your entity form, which is then the equivalent of a basic form in Portals, or now Power Pages. It's a bit too much for them. And so with the new Parapages Design Studio, I feel that it's going to be a lot easier for no-code or low-code developers, even pro-code developers to pick it up, because that daunting experience that I went through, it's no longer there, really. And you now have what they now have coined workspaces. So you have the Pages workspace, which is where essentially you style and build your forms. So now it has like the click and select type of experience where you can select an image, control, or a video as well. So it's a lot easier than what you would do previously. And then you have things like the styles workspace. So now you can select preset templates or themes, and you can create your own custom themes in alignment to your branding. And then, yeah, in terms of the templates workspace, that's where you can select different types of templates available. Like there's a registration template now. And then I think the final one is a data workspace. So that's where you can build your tables and your columns directly within the design studio, whereas previously you had to go into, model-driven app, or now the Para App Studio, to go and create those tables and columns and add them to your solution. But now you can just do it within the designer studio of Parapages. And to me, I think that's really a good step forward in trying to bridge that learning curve. And then even now, when you now provision a Parapages site, it's now that guided experience. Like it's going to ask you, hey, what is it that you want to do? Here's some templates that you can choose from. What do you want your domain to be? Like it's all guided. Whereas previously you had to go, to places like the admin center, which was kind of a maze if you didn't know what you were doing with portals or Parapages. But even things like the setup, so things like the authentication, the identity providers, whether you want to hook it up to Azure B2C or use something like Microsoft, LinkedIn, or Facebook as an identity provider, it's now all within that same designer studio. Like they've made it a lot easier. So now, if you are someone who doesn't have any experience or has some experience with some other portal platform, it's not going to be a huge learning curve. And to me, that's really great, in my opinion. But then there's also the argument of, hey, well, we were actually wanting, better licensing, but now we get this, but, priorities. So there's nothing to say that it won't change in the future. So I would just say watch this space. I mean, the more I guess popularity it gains, and they'll probably relook at the licensing. I don't have a crystal ball, but that's me. That's my assumptions for the future.
In fact, they ask those questions. So they're like, oh, licensing is killing us. We can't use that product. And they're definitely listening. And they did respond to that during the live sessions, the Q&As. And they said that they're looking at restructuring the licensing model just to address a better audience. But one thing that they did highlight upfront, and they've been really clear about it, is that this is not a product for small organizations. And I remember there was an internal call, and George Dubinsky in Australia was making some really funny comments saying, what do you mean small customers? But anyway, so what they mean is that it's meant for scale. It's built, it's built so that you can actually have hundreds of thousands, millions of views onto your portal, so it can handle that load. And they did say, and they're quite honest about it. They said, there are other products out there like Wix and other smaller players that actually cater for that market. We're not competing with them. This is not our bread and butter. We're actually focusing more on the government departments, the big overheads and so on. So definitely listening into that space. The other question that they asked was around the low code side of things, PowerFX, that really expedites the delivery of solutions and how that can be used with portals. And they're definitely listening onto that space. And this is an experience that they want to enable on the majority of the Power Platform. So as Elaiza said, watch that space. Things will be available, in the future. AK, what are your thoughts about? Sorry, go ahead, Elaiza, and then we'll hand over to AK.
Yeah, one thing that I do want to add, and AK might have, played with it already, is that they've also included, like the pro developer experience as well. So when it was Power Apps portals, you could do inline edits directly to the code within the former Design Studio. But now what they've also enabled is that you can download your Power App Pages, I guess, code as a project into Visual Studio Code, which is, what Hamish was talking about earlier. And as a pro dev, you can make your changes directly in Visual Studio Code. And then once you're ready, you can publish your project back to Power Apps Pages. So you do that, Power Pages. So you do that using the Power Platform CLI. So CLI is the command line interface. So they really thought about, every single persona with this launch of Power Pages. And I just wanted to add that in case people weren't aware of the pro dev capabilities for Power Pages. Like, it's not just for no code, low code developers, it's also for pro code developers. So AK, over to you.
Yeah, that's what you said is correct, because I was initially trained as a web developer to write the web page in the Notepad, so I'm not really the big fan of those designer. And but previously, that's the only thing you have. You need to open the those template and pages, and you don't really have the kind of pro dev capability to write the developer portal, or pages. So currently, that's a really good things that we can directly work on the like a Visual Studio Code, the tools that we're familiar, and usually hand coded everything. So which is a good for us. And if you look at the sections, the a number of sections on the build, you can see modernizations and low code, no code, they are almost the same numbers. So it's really a balance even this year, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds really good. I've pasted in there the link to the the keynote session, or our keynote session for the Power Platform, and that was done by Charles Lamana, who's the corporate VP for business applications and the Power Platform. And then it was done in collaboration with Jeff Tapper, who's corporate VP for Teams, OneDrive, and SharePoint, which was really interesting. And it almost felt like Jeff was dominating the conversation as opposed to Lamana. But we love Charles Lamana, and he had a great message in there, and he covered the Power Pages. But then after that, there was another one, which was my favorite session that I'll put in there, Breakout 42. And that was done by Sangya Singh and Ryan Cunningham. I'm a big fan of both of them. Ryan Cunningham was actually our keynote speaker at the New Zealand Business Application Summit last year. So I've got a lot of respect for both of them. But yeah, they covered some of those changes and on the fusion development that is happening basically between those two teams. So if you have time, go watch those on demand. They're actually really interesting sessions. But maybe a good segue, as AK and Elaiza were talking about sort of this pro code and low code experience, is to talk a little bit about Power Virtual Agent and the automation in there, Power Automate and Power Virtual Agent. So one thing that really blew my mind is the PVA sessions. And basically what they announced is that, first of all, in the past, we used to do the Azure bot framework development in Azure. And then there was this low code thing where you can do PVA, Power Virtual Agent, separately. And those two worlds were difficult to get together. Whereas now, within the same experience, you can do the one or the other. And then they also talked about, some of the changes that you can do in terms of, switching between text and speech. It was just a drop down. It's like turn it into a speech bot or turn it into a text bot. I'm like, this is mind blowing, to be able to turn, because I always thought, why am I typing all of this information? I've got, Google and Alexa devices everywhere on my home. People are used to it. Why can't we just integrate it with Teams and say, hey, Teams, can you X, Y, and Z? And then it would basically call a PVA and then do the work for you. So this is the direction that they're heading towards. They also talked about sort of the rich experience that you getting responses back. So you can have like, images, videos, and then adaptive cards. And now the adaptive cards you can actually do within the same user interface. So you don't have to go somewhere else. So definitely merging this, pro code and citizen developer work to be done within the same platform, giving the people the options to do the one or the other based on whichever they prefer, and encourage this fusion development. I don't know. I want to pick on you, Lin. I don't know if that PVA was your area that you liked, or whether there was something else that you wanted to highlight.
Yeah, I didn't manage to wake up at 3 a.m. to watch the sessions like you. So I just happened to rewatch those on-demand sessions, which are Power Platform related. And since doesn't really walk much about the PVA or even the Power Pages, so most of my focus sessions are around the Power App sessions. And one of the sessions that is really beneficial for me is what's new in the world of Microsoft Power Apps, and they explain that they have this new features how they can turn the images and designs, like you take a form and even a PowerPoint and something that and turn it into a quick design and do its convert it into the Canvas apps. So that is really interesting idea for me. So
Hey,
yes,
just on there, I'm just so interested in terms of, like, for me, taking a photo of a sketch of an app just seems super gimmicky. Like, has anyone actually played with it and tested it out? Does it actually work? Because I can imagine, like, say you have a blue button on your drawing. When you interact with that button, does it have is the highlights consistent and stuff? Or like, I don't know. I kind of feel like I need to play with it, but what's the feedback on terms of actually using it?
I think this definitely warrants a separate session. I'm really excited about it, and the reason why is because Nora is the product manager that sort of worked on this product, and since the MVP Summit, I've been sort of having a chat with her, participating in private previews and playing around with the feature, and then giving some feedback. So I can do a demo actually right now, but I'll hand over to Elaiza first.
Oh, and what I was going to add to the Express design for Power Apps is, for those of you who are on Twitter, so one of our Microsoft MVPs in Melbourne, Australia, Natraj, he tweeted about it, but then a response came shortly afterwards from Yuka. So Yuka is one of the OGs when it comes to the CRM world in terms of bloggers and MVPs. He basically joked about how he's not a designer, so he would still be able to create like poorly designed apps using Figma. So Figma is a tool used by designers essentially to create, beautiful end user interfaces for applications that anyone's building. But I just found that interesting because it just shows that, like, you can now have people who are actual designers get involved in making beautiful apps, and knowing Hamish's company, like, that's something that you guys would totally be.
Yeah, I'm probably not that level, but yeah, but I think the Figma thing is awesome. I reckon that's epic.
Yeah.
I've worked with clients who've literally, they have in-house designers. They design amazing apps, and then you got to try to get that amazing design into a Power App, and it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Because they don't have the quite the same controls they're used to. So that the Figma thing is awesome. I reckon that's a great improvement.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me share my screen and I'll do a quick demo, just conscious of time. But yeah, I was really impressed when I saw that sort of light up on everybody's environments. I'm like, I've been really wanting to tell you about it for so long since the MVP Summit, but I can't. So yeah, so if you go to your sort of homepage for your sort of maker experience, then you're going to see a couple of new tiles. The first one is image, and the second one is Figma. So this is part of the Express Design bit that Satya, I think, talked about during the keynote, but also Charles Lamana and Ryan talked about it. Then obviously there was this on-demand session done by Nora and Kavishi, both of them sort of working in the same space, but providing some sort of insight on how it works. So it's really straightforward, really simple. You click on the image tile in here. It comes up with a little dialogue just explaining how it works, what doesn't work, just setting the scene so that you don't get disappointed when you use it. And then you click on next, you get through that wizard that will take you through the different steps. And in here you can name your app. So let's call it I don't know, Wellington Power Platform UG, something like that. And then this is image, let's say. You can upload your own image or use a sample. I don't know why you would use a sample, but definitely upload your own. And what I've got in here is something that I've done just using a sketching tool. It's not Figma, but it's, we usually, when we do our prototypes, what we call paper prototypes to our customers, we actually do them so that they look like they were hand drawn, although they're done using a tool rather than, just a normal napkin or a piece of paper. And in there, you define what format do you want. Do you want it tablet or do you want it as a phone application? Typically when you're creating your canvas, that's what you do. And then you click on next. So in here, it's actually going to show you the picture. Behind the scenes, it's identifying all the fields that are available behind it. So this is the picture that I uploaded. It's just one form. It's basically a result that we use for what we call a birth record, but it has name information, last name, date of birth, and so on. And as you can see, it's drawn. It looks like it's very sketchy as opposed to something that is computer generated. Again, great for prototypes. And it automatically detected that this is an input field. This is a label. It can detect buttons. It can detect radio buttons, checkboxes, and so on. So it's actually quite capable. And if you actually realize that you want to change the data type, you can do that. A very good example is date of birth. It detected that as text, whereas in reality, that might be a date picker. So you can just click on date picker, and now you've changed the data type to something else. So that generates your model. And then you can click on next. It asks you whether you want to create a table that would be associated with that structure. Just in interest of time, I'm going to skip that step. And then that simplifies the wizard because you're not going to create a table. The feedback that I gave them is that most of the time you would do those two exercises separately. So you would do the data modeling separate, and then you would have a different team responsible for the schema, the relationships, and so on. And then you've got a different team responsible for the user interface. So most likely, by the time you want to start building the user interface, your data model is driven, is already built. Maybe that's because I'm a dynamics person rather than a Power Platform person. So we're used to data first, build the schema, and then build the forms. But maybe that can change in the future. I'm not really sure. So skip this for now and then click on create. And then within seconds, you've got a Canvas app basically that has all the fields that you want with the correct data types, and it's laid out for you to be sort of used. So obviously there's quite a lot of things that it can and cannot do. And again, I give Nora some feedback on the ways of we can improve it. And I'll give you a quick highlight about a few of them. One thing you will notice that the fields are not necessarily aligned when they show up. They're just all over the show. And I'm like, yeah, it didn't really, specify that in my example. But maybe if, you can align them or provide options to align them, try and respect the proportions, how big the font is, and so on. Because as you can see, it's a little bit plain right now. Title that is a little bit bolder or anything like that. They're all over the show. So definitely there could be improvement that is done in that space. But yeah, that's it. Truly no code, nothing touched. You just import it and then it creates it for you. So I really love that capability that is available there.
You just reminded me of the when you said no touch, when Steven Siciliano has in the past with our PAs, so like, look, no hands, and you can see that. I don't know if any of you have seen his demos previously when he does Power Automate for desktop, but yeah, it's hilarious when he's always like, look, no hands.
Amazing. Sarah has a question.
Yeah, so these, if you're using the Express Builder, is it using your AI credits?
No, not that I know of, actually. I don't know how this is licensed. That's actually a very good question.
I think I might have prompted that question because I was saying that, behind the scenes they're using Azure object detection services to do the automatic recognition of the elements on the uploaded image and mapping it to the input controls in Canvas apps. But for you as a user, it has it has no impact to you whatsoever in terms of the AI builder licenses. It's just in the background. That's the service that they're using to make this new Express design happen.
So if you didn't have a Dynamics or a paid Power Platform license, is it going to be available for people who only have the Microsoft 365 Power Platform use rights? Do you know?
Good question. Not sure.
Yeah, because with these sorts of things, they usually they bring out this epic thing, right? It's in preview, it's free in preview, and they're still deciding the licensing. So I don't know. I feel like sure, I mean, it's like a premium server, especially the Figma one, right? That's you don't have you got to pay for value. So I think I would assume somewhere, whether it's your AI builder credits or it's some other way of paying for, I'm sure there will be some cost to it. I don't know. That's my point of view. I don't know.
Yeah. So, it sounds like a Michael question. I'll go and see if I can find the answer. Make myself useful. Yeah, I look at this stuff and I think from a rapid prototyping point of view, fantastic. From a demo point of view, fantastic. How it will actually be used in the reality of a full-on project, that's what I'm going to be interested in seeing, how it actually gets leveraged. Because I can kind of see it being more useful in snippets of a project rather than creating an entire app every time. You're on the screen within Canvas apps. You want to use a Figma screen for that, please. Just click a button and bring. So that's where I think it will hopefully head, because it's a useful tool, but it's not. At the moment, it's great demoware. Fantastic. It's going to get people excited for sure. And I think that's similar with the Power Pages. Power Pages is really powerful. Amazing to demo at the moment. What I'm playing around with it today. I'm just trying to understand what are the limitations at this stage around where the boundaries, because there's obviously some areas where you want to do some pretty crazy things, which is where things like Visual Studio would come into play. And so I think it's working out how the devs plug this into their flow, as Sati was saying. It's going to be the intriguing parts for me.
Yep. Absolutely. So, Sarah, Michael will get you the answer.
I'll do my best.
He'll get in touch. But I can also check with the PM and then see if they've got an insight on how they want to license that. But yeah, very good question. I never thought about it. And that's always my shortfall, is that I always think, this is exciting, and I never think about the cost. And then when it comes to customers, they're like, that's expensive. We can't afford that. So always a constraint. But when I was doing the preview, one positive feedback that I give the PM is that it's actually very familiar in terms of experience. Like if you've used AI Builder before, you've used form recognition and things like that, it works exactly the same way. And I was part of some other previews where they're enhancing some of that AI capabilities, and they keep that experience consistent. And that's great, because that means that the learning curve is not that steep. You can quickly adopt that new technology and embrace it and start using it. Definitely a big thing. Along that same session, the on-demand BRK42, they talked about the API to Canvas app. And I was like, I didn't get it. What? And it was literally, you've got an API that is exposed, an API that can do CRUD, create, read, update, delete. And then you just point to it, and you say, create an app for me. And it basically creates an app with full navigation, create capabilities, read capabilities, list capabilities, the whole thing. I was like, why didn't you tell me about that? I wanted to try that. So I'm going to get back in touch with the PM and say, hey, can you please give me access to that private preview? I want to try it. I want to give you some feedback. But definitely, like, it excited a lot of people in our teams, because quite often we would be building like integration with legacy systems, and we've got either Logic Apps, or we've got Power Automate, or even like MuleSoft, or whatever APIs that are exposing this capability, and then we want to build a Canvas app to do it. Well, guess what? You can do it within one line of code, like one command line, CLI. You do that, and then it generates everything for you. And then obviously it's not going to be perfect, but you can work on it. Hamish?
Yeah, so just a question on that. So is that similar to, like, at the early days of the Canvas Power Apps? Sorry, you would say point it at a Dataverse table, and it creates, here's my account table, and it creates the app, but it's only for that single table. And you've got a list page, list the accounts, for example. You click through, and you can edit and update and view the accounts. So is it like that, but then across the whole API, so it's across multiple tables? Like,
I don't know if it does multiple tables. The demo, again, I didn't know about it as an MVP. So I first saw it at Build, and I was really excited about it. The demo was just one table where they're retrieving this information and displaying it. And they did just demonstrated how, the scaffolding is all done, all the information is there, the navigation, all the CRUD APIs are done. And the way she demonstrated it was using a Power Automate API custom connector that she built to another external system for cats and dogs or something like that. So yeah, it was really exciting to see, like, this is truly low code, no code experience. So it definitely has a lot of merits and will get a lot of people going. And it was like, she just mentioned it and no one tweeted about it, no one talked about it. I was like all over LinkedIn going, hey people, look at that, this is amazing. No, definitely, something to look up for. All right. Anything else that we want to talk about in terms of the Express design and those sessions before we move on to something else? Okay. So the next bit that I wanted to cover, so we briefly talked about PVA. I don't know if anybody else wanted to add something about PVA. Otherwise, Elaiza, anything about Power Automate that excited you? I always look at you when I'm talking about Power Automate.
Yeah, so a couple of things. So again, I think it was actually Yuko who tweeted about it. So it got shipped, but then they talked about it at Microsoft Build, and it's being able to apply Process Advisor now in your Power Automate Cloud Flow. So the use case that was shown was there's like some templates now that you can use. One of them was to do with monitoring your Azure DevOps. So in other words, if there's a particular work item that is still in the new state and hasn't been updated to the next state or whatever state it needs to be, you can now see that. But you can also now apply it to your Cloudflow. So when you go to the Power Automate Maker portal, sorry, trying to keep up with the terminology, and you're looking at your Cloudflow, over on the bottom, somewhere in like the bottom right in the middle, you'll see Process Advisor. And when you view it, it's actually going to show you analytics of where a certain action is taking longer or taking more time than other actions. So it's actually to help you to understand where you can optimize the performance of your Cloudflow. So the example was an approval action. It was just, at a waiting time of, let's say, 10 days. And so the suggestion there was, okay, how about you include more than one approver to try and get that going a lot quicker. So that was that in terms of Power Automate Cloud Flows. And then you have some new actions that are available in Power Automate for desktop. So one of them was to do with displaying messages. So this one's really cool. So it's basically giving you the ability to either display like a read-only message window that appears to the end user, or you can do your own dialogue. So the use case that Nico, who's one of the program managers in the Power Automate team, he showcased how you can now create your own custom form as a message to relay back to the user. So in the form that he showed, he had 3 fields. So I think it was like full name, email, and continent, something like that. But what was really cool was he showed the form designer experience. So again, it's that whole click and select experience where you can either select your input, which is like date and time. You can select an element, so that's like a text control, and then you have an action, so it's either a submit button or launching a URL. So that was really cool. I think that's pretty good, because normally it's always been, for those of you who have used Power Automate for desktop, you're recording your screen and you're going through the steps. But now you can have these messages or dialogues displayed to get that interactive input from that user. And then whatever data that the user has entered will be stored as a variable that you can use later downstream in your flow. So that for me was pretty cool. And then if you're a pro code developer, there's now script highlighting. So what is that? If you are applying things like PowerShell scripts, JavaScript, or SQL statements even, now when you look at your script within the Power Automate for desktop application, you can see it all color coded. So, if you're a no-code, low-code developer and you're looking over your pro-code developer's shoulder, and most of the time they're working in dark mode, Visual Studio Code editor, and you see all the different colors, like you see the blue and the red and the green. So usually if it's green, it means that some line of code has been commented out. So now you'll see that visually in Power Automate for desktop, whereas before it was just lines of text. So now as a pro code developer, you'll be able to have that visibility and I guess troubleshoot quicker. So that's pretty cool. And then outside of Power Automate for desktop, in terms of the application and the actions that have been introduced, they're now doing what they call, I think, hosted VMs for Power Automate for desktop. So in other words, as part of the Power Automate desktop experience, they're going to take care of that. So in the scenario where you need to scale your automation for any of the bots that you develop, they'll take care of it in terms of, making sure that there's the relevant resources available behind the scenes so that your bot is running at optimized capacity and all of that. So there's a dedicated on-demand session on that. I'll try find it and I'll share it in the chat. But those were the things that stood out. I mean, the other one was to do with how to create your own custom connector and get that published as an independent publisher. So that's led by Natalie. So she's another program manager based in the States. So she talked about that as well. Yeah, that's pretty much the roundup for Power Automate. Yeah. Sarah.
Yeah, it was really amazing. Go ahead, Sarah.
There was also something I noticed about some future change to licensing to enable SaaS providers to integrate Power Automate.
Yeah, so sorry, that was a really good one. So this is what Steven Siciliano covered towards the end of his session. So this is about where you can so now as a company, let's say if you're an ISV, so the use case was Adobe, you can now embed the Power Automate SDK. So in terms of Cloudflow, it's not Power Automate for desktop, into your SaaS product. So in the demo, it was showing how Adobe has now embedded the Power Automate Cloudflow Maker experience. So you can go ahead and create Cloudflows directly in Adobe's interface to work with their actions. So you no longer need to switch between the two. But what he alluded to was how that licensing would work, because for you as a SaaS provider, so in other words, Adobe, you would need to you could take care of those costs on behalf of your customer. So Stephen alluded to pay as you go, and he said that there would be more details in the upcoming Microsoft Inspire conference. So it was just like a brief, like, piece of candy for all of us to be like, ooh. But yeah, but then as Michael has said, so it's nice to see cool things like this, but how practical is it in the everyday business use case? So I guess we'll see more of that happening. So yeah, we'll see what happens there.
Hamish, have you used sort of the Power Automate sort of insight capabilities to sort of get a bit of insight on how it's performing, not just from a technical perspective, but as Elaiza was saying, from a business perspective and how it can improve in an organization?
Yeah, so I've been playing with that process advisor, over some of the more complex flows that I've got. I'm, to be honest, struggling to understand the reports that it puts out, and I don't know. There must be something to do with the kind of the internal mechanics of what goes on behind the scenes of a flow. But if I say look at my flow and the steps it goes through, and then I look at Process Advisor and how it's run, it skips some steps, and I need to spend more time looking at it. In terms of, I guess I need to understand the reports that it spits out. But I mean, it's quite good in terms of you can see, you may have a certain action in your flow that's taking, a lot longer than others. And you can spot that pretty easily, whereas if we're trying to do that off the bat, going through your flow without that would be very difficult to find. So there is use in it. I just need to figure out how to read those reports. At the moment, it's a bit and understand why it actually is happening when it is analysing the flow behind the scenes. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the highlight to me was the scalability that they talked about, as Elaiza was saying, like having PVA as a service, and you can say I want 100 VMs, and then you create that VM once, you define what that image is, and then you can reuse it over and over again, and it's all as a service. It's all being done sort of separately. But funny you mentioned about what is the use case and where it's going to be used from a robotic process automation, RPA, and one of the things that they talk about is AS400 integration, like mainframe, old style integration. I don't know how I came across that. I'm going to paste the link in there, but this is a 1993 video. It's a devcast by Microsoft. And if you click on the link, you will see Satya Nadella back in 93 as a marketing person talking about how to integrate Excel with AS400. This was hilarious. I looked at it and I was like, this is so funny. But what's interesting, I mean, we're not going to watch it right now. Watch it during your own time. But actually, look at how, with all my respect to Satya Nadella, look at how bad he was as a presenter. And that tells you that, no matter how bad you are, you can work on yourself and you can go up to become the CEO and be very eloquent to the point where you're the keynote speaker and you're an excellent speaker. So, look at his posture, his umming and eyeing and all of that. It was just hilarious. And, if you filter out, like the big CRT screen and, some of this older technologies and whatnot, the content is exactly the same. The problems they're trying to solve is exactly what they were trying to solve ages ago. So I think this carries on, and it's exactly the same as what we're doing today.
You should post it on LinkedIn and
I should. Yeah,
because I'm sure it'll get views. It'll be funny. Yeah, it'll be good.
And anybody that has recorded, podcast would look back at episode 1 and go, "Oh my God, what was I doing? This is so embarrassing." But that's all good. So just conscious of time. Elaiza, didn't you have to drop off like 10 minutes ago?
Yeah, but it's okay. I like chatting to you guys, so it's fine.
Oh, thank you. So the last session I wanted to talk about, I know I wanted to cover a little, just such a funny picture. I just wanted to talk a little bit about Power BI and other bits, but I don't think we have time. I'll talk about this Kate 42 session. And that was, that session was actually a Q&A between Ryan Cunningham, Sangya, I think, and the audience, and they covered a lot of those questions that we asked today. Is, what does it mean from a Power Pages perspective? What is the licensing? What are the differences, and so on? So that was really good. But the other one that I wanted to cover, let me make sure I've got the right link, and this was the Julie Strauss one. And basically what she was talking about, I think it's this one, if I'm not mistaken, the Key 07. And she was covering this fusion development and how a lot of organizations are actually building Canvas apps to provide with citizen developers the interface to actually do something that usually would require Azure DevOps or a command line or triggering a pipeline or Git, integration with Visual Studio and things like that. She was talking about how they're using those Canvas apps to actually abstract some of that and encourage that fusion development. And again, like when I saw that, I got really excited because this is what we're currently doing at DXC. Part of the developer, the starter kit, the Center of Excellence starter kit, it actually provides you with a user interface where you can create branches, you can export solutions from your Power Platform environment, you can merge them, do a PR or a pull request into the main branch, and then get someone to review it all through a Canvas app. So basically, citizen developers don't have to know about all this ADO stuff and whatnot. They just say, this is my solution, this is my environment. Can you go and do your magic? And then all the pro devs will deal with it in the background and ensure it's actually going into the pipelines and doing all the work that it needs to do. So it's a very interesting session that is definitely worthwhile watching and having a look at. So we're just on top of the hour. I would have loved to spend another hour talking about, some other things, but unfortunately, duty calls, I've got kids shouting in the background. But any final thoughts? Maybe we'll do a quick round the table, starting with you, Michael. Any final thoughts about the conference?
I've just still got a lot of videos to watch. It's been some interesting stuff, but yeah, there's so much content. That's the thing I guess I'm trying to tackle at the moment. So I've got a bit of watching to do. The other thing I just want to quickly highlight is, let's try and do something in person next month. I think you mentioned it, Rami. Let's try and
Absolutely.
get together. I'll book out the rooms in Microsoft HQ down here in Wellington, and we'll have some pizzas or something.
We'll definitely do that. Cool. Lin, any final thoughts?
Well, I wish I could see more business application sessions, but it's Microsoft built, so.
I completely agree with you. Like, it felt like the content was a bit light and not deep enough in terms of, build and custom code. And I want to see how it's done. A lot of it sounded like very 1 hour quick overview. This is what's new, get excited and then move on.
Yeah.
But I guess this is where we come in. We can do that in the user groups. So yeah, I definitely agree with that sentiment. Cool. AK?
Yeah, so to me, it's like this conference, like last year, they tuned a lot of focus on the AI, and recently, today's like 27 or 2 days ago, the Meta selected Azure as the strategic cloud, provider for the AI. So, which is a good expansions on the Azure AI.
Absolutely.
And they train the Azure to train 175 billion language. So
Awesome.
yeah, I think future will be more about all AI, and even if we look at all the Power Platforms, most of the new features are driven by all the AI stuff. Yeah.
Absolutely. And again, 100% agree with you. Those conferences, they sort of shine a crystal ball to what the future is going to look like. So in one of the sessions, it was, yes, it started as a sales pitch, as in we can do this with low code and whatnot. And then I think Charles Lamana said 72% of all development done by 2025 will be done using low code. And I'm like, took a picture of that. And my comment was, we're going to be in demand. Whether you're pro code, low code, whatever, you're going to be in demand because there's going to be a lot of demand in that space for sure. So yeah, I agree with you, AK. And Hamish?
Yeah, I just put a thing in the chat around. It was one of those kind of like hidden secrets that no one's talking about on social media, but the Power Platform landing zones and the kind of architecture framework is pretty cool. And I know there's a demo there where they're literally going to put you into it's through the Azure portal, and it sets you up a complete entire instance of the Power Platform with multiple environments for different purposes, sets the data loss prevention policies automatically. It's pretty impressive. So check that out in terms of you're in a sorry, my kid's down here. But if you've got kind of enterprise scale Power Platform rollout, this kind of architecture guidance is awesome. Yeah, really cool. I better go. I've got
awesome.
Dinner time apparently, according to my kids.
Thanks, Hamish.
Thanks, guys. See ya.
And thanks, Hamish. And this is a good sort of notice that we're running out of time, and I know we all got kids to look after. So thank you everybody for joining us today. Great insight from the MVPs in Wellington. Thank you for the audience for participating and for being there. This is being recorded, so we can watch it on demand later. Have a good night, and we'll see you next time, hopefully in person.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye. See you all.